Yes, so here's our first question. So, do you speak about the COPE exam with your students?
Um, yes, yes, I do. I mean, to be honest with you, Selin, I mean, when I started, I didn't know enough about the COPE exam to feel very confident talking about the exam. I mean, I started in the summer, so my first experience of the COPE was marking some of the September COPE. So I mean, that was the first time I saw it. So when I had my first class, that we started, a week or two after that, and it was a repeat class. So I mean, they know more about the COPE than I did. They would ask me questions about it, and it was difficult because I didn't really feel like I knew enough about it. However, I think what I realised is the students really want to talk about it. I think in pre-faculty we have a kind of a view, an idea of how we'd like to teach the students and how we'd like them to learn English, which I generally agree with. And it is more of a sort of a holistic approach and about enriching their language and their language skills, but the students ultimately just want to pass the COPE, so that's all they want to talk about. So I think you can't avoid talking about it. If you're asking me, what ways do I talk about it, I don't think they need, particularly from my experience with repeat students, they didn't need information about what the exam includes or how to approach the exam because they'd all done it and failed it at least once. But I think what we generally spoke about was when we were working on certain activities in class, how that activity was going to help them in terms of their development of skills. So, one of the things we talk about a lot is inferring meaning, for example, from reading text. So while I would be trying to improve their general reading skills, I think also we'd have a discussion about, well, okay, how has this helped your general inference skills, and then how can you apply this to some of the questions that might come up in the COPE exam.
I see.
So you try and, I guess that's how I try to discuss COPE without being an exam-based class, although I think the students really just wanted to sit COPE practice papers. I think that's what they would have preferred.
So did you teach mainstreams?
I supported a mainstream class, but that was only for 1 day a week, 5 hours. But I think it's infectious. I mean, it's unavoidable. I mean, you've got students here who basically, I don't think the difference with the repeat students is they knew the exam, so they were much more familiar with it. But I mean, generally, if you're in Bustle, then the door that you have to get through is the COPE exam. So I mean, you're not gonna. They're aware of it. It's the elephant in the room, isn't it? That you're aware of, they're aware of. You're trying to improve their English without, becoming a kind of an exam-based teaching to the test kind of class. But at the same time, from their point of view, they're looking at the work you're giving them and saying, well, okay, this is interesting. I'm really interested in primates and economy. How is this helping me pass my COPE exam? So I guess you have to engage in that conversation with them. And it is a balancing act, I think, yeah.
Do you think that they would be interested in those if they didn't have this COPE exam?
I think it's a difficult question. I mean, I think, I think some of them are. And I mean, I think one of the interesting things about Bustle compared to maybe a sort of a private Dersani or language school, where I guess traditionally the people who are going to Dersanis or language schools maybe are professional people. They're taking courses to improve their English, perhaps in terms of further employment or work. What you've got here is a really interesting kind of demographic, haven't you, of students who are all interested in different things. So I think some are very interested, and I think sometimes the way that we present the work does engage them. But I mean, I've come across some students who I think really do the work because they realise there are points attached to the work and they've got an attendance limit they need to keep to. So, you know, I can't say to you hand on heart that I think every day all 15, 16, 20 students are thoroughly engaged with an article about microcredits, you know. And so I think, you know, to make it relevant to them, we can draw on the kind of the social things, and you know, as an English teacher, I guess I'm really interested in that, and I want to talk about those things with students, and I hope that we can develop their English through these kind of interesting topic areas and discussion sort of points. But I think you have to give them what they want as well, you know, and I think what they want is they want to feel this is helping them, and to see sort of real benefit from what they're doing in terms of getting to their departments, which is what it's all about, isn't it?
Okay, I agree. So do you feel that you and your students speak more about the COPE exam through the end of the course, for example? I mean, when the exam is getting close, or when you do more COPE practice in a classroom rather than the course books? Do you feel that, or?
I think it felt like that with the first course. The last course, the 16-week course, I had the same group of students for the whole 16 weeks, and being new to Bustle, new to the system, new to the COPE exam, I mean, I basically followed our HTU's lead, which was, I mean, she was very, very clear that she didn't really want, for the first 8 weeks at least, she didn't want a lot of discussion about the COPE exam, which was difficult because they wanted to talk about the COPE exam. I think the difference in this course, and because I know more about the COPE exam and having seen the COPE papers, having taken part in the COPE marking more and seen more COPE practice tests, I feel I'm more, you know, aware and I have a better knowledge of the test. So I don't want to be talking about the COPE exam with them all the time, but I felt it was important this course. Actually, we had a discussion at the beginning about the COPE exam, about where they thought they were struggling, and we tried to talk about some of the areas that they think they needed to work on and develop on, and that was based on their experience in the COPE exam, which they hadn't passed. So yeah, I mean, I haven't avoided talking about it, but I do try and avoid getting into long debates with them about the exam, because I don't think that really gets us anywhere. But I do think that you constantly try and make the work relevant to their goal. You know, my goal might be slightly different, which is I want them to become more literate, you know, more world aware and all of those things, which I think our course certainly aims to do. But I also temper that with the knowledge that, you know, these kids, these students have only really got one goal in mind, and I think there are one or two who really enjoy learning English and are very interested in, and I think the majority are just trying to get over that last hurdle to get to their departments, you know, and I think it'd be very difficult to not talk about the COPE exam.
Yeah.
I think the first course I couldn't talk about it because I didn't know about it. Whereas I think this course, because I'm more aware of it, I feel more comfortable and more at ease discussing aspects of the exam with them. But like I said, that's generally because I'm trying to make sure they understand the relevance of what we're doing in class to actually develop them towards that goal.
So how do you think talking about the COPE exam, teaching strategies, inferencing, etc., for example, affects your classroom performance?
Has it affected my classroom performance?
Their classroom performance.
Their classroom performance. Well, I think it does, because it's like a carrot and a stick in some ways, and you don't want to use it in that way. But naturally, because that's their goal, and there's also that ticking clock of, you know, they've only got a certain amount of time or a certain amount of goes at this before maybe they're going to end up in Malta or somewhere. They invariably, if you can actually say to them, well, look, we're doing this, and if their motivation is low, if they're not very engaged, and if you're saying, what, monkeys again? Well, yes, but actually what we're going to practice here is these skills, and we're going to work particularly on this strategy, then I can really see a difference in terms of their engagement, in terms of their motivation in the class. I don't particularly like to use it in that way, but if it's a means to an end, and they're getting what they want from it, which is they feel their skills are developing. I'm getting what I want from it, which is hopefully successful delivery of English in various forms. Then I think that's okay. I just think it doesn't feel to me like an exam. It doesn't feel like exam. We're not teaching to a test. It doesn't feel like we are at all. But we are, I think, showing making sure the students see the relevance of what they're doing, and that what they're doing is linked to their progression. That doesn't mean that every day I'm saying, well, don't forget, this is for the COPE exam. It's not really like that. But I mean, I would say every week, maybe every day, depends on what we're doing, but a couple of times every week we're talking about, well, what have we been doing? How has that helped? What do you think's improved? How does that apply to maybe the questions you struggled with in the last COPE exam? Mm-hmm. What about the practice test we've just done? How do you feel your skills have developed? Do you find that easier or not? So I mean, I think there is that kind of dialogue, but it's not a kind of I guess it's not like a test, teach, test, talk about COPE, do something, talk about COPE again. It's not that sort of style, but it's there or thereabouts, and we're either inferring that it's relevant to the COPE, or it's an explicit, this is going to help you in this area. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the final question, you've mentioned this already, but just to repeat, what do you think should be the objectives of the prefect level?
What do I think they should be, or what do the students think it should be? I mean, I think one of the misnomers or misconceptions with pre-faculty, and maybe it's easier for me to talk about this being relatively new to it. I think when I heard about pre-faculty, my assumptions were very different to what I saw, and I assumed that pre-faculty was going to be a relatively advanced learner of English, but they're not. They're generally sort of strong upper intermediate students. Really, that's what it feels like to me, and it feels like actually the pre-faculty course is a course that needs to iron out issues they've got in their English that they've, we're almost brushing up their upper intermediate skills. We're trying to correct some of the issues that they are sort of having problems with regularly. So, in terms of the aims, I think we have to talk about the language. We have to work on sort of grammatical structures with them, whether we want to or not, because a lot of them are still struggling with some of the basics, really, or not so basic grammatical structures. But I mean, it's a difficult question, Selin, because I think my background as a teacher is I'm not an ESOL, EAL, TEFL teacher. That's not my background. I mean, my background is teaching English literature, English language, to English students. So I believe in trying to give a very sort of rich, diverse approach to the learning, and I want them to be engaged and interested. So I like the way that the pre-faculty course is designed. I think I feel more at home in the pre-faculty course than perhaps I would do at PIN or intermediate, because I think there is scope for us to use interesting articles to engage them and have sort of more advanced discussions. But I think we also have to have that kind of that bedrock of both solid language learning tempered with a kind of an awareness that although we're not sort of teaching to a test, we are teaching towards a test, and I think that it all comes through that funnel, doesn't it, of whatever we think about it, whatever we may feel as teachers, our customers have a very clear goal which may differ from how we view the classroom or how we want the classroom to be. So I mean, I think if I'm honest with you, I quite like the way the pre-faculty course is set up, and I feel the more that I know about COPE, then the more I can actually use my knowledge of the exam to kind of make sure that this very rich, diverse course that we're delivering has real relevance to them. So I don't really feel any huge need for change. The only thing I would say is I think when I look at the work we're doing with them, and I look at the kind of readings we want to do with them, I think some of the students struggle because I don't think they are, I don't know if pre-faculty is the right word for them. Pre-faculty suggests something else to me, and I don't think they are pre-faculty. I don't know what I think when I think of pre-faculty, but I guess my experience with the students and in terms of their ability to understand what I would consider to be university type texts that they may come across, then they're not there.
I agree.
And I'm not sure if you're going to get there in 16 years, to be honest with you. But I guess you leave that to English 101 and English 102, huh?
Did you ask a question?
It was a rhetorical question, in the sense that, I mean, I guess that, you know, we do what we can to get them through the exam, don't we, really? I guess in terms of them becoming truly literate university department students, then I guess we leave that to FAE, huh? And that'd be their job.
I think so, yeah.
But I don't feel I can tell you enough about it because I don't think I've been doing it enough, and I think I still feel quite new to the setup actually, and I still feel quite unsure of my own. I feel more confident than I did, but I mean I still feel kind of, do I really know what these students need to pass the COPE exam? I guess it's becoming more apparent the more I see them, really. Yeah, I don't know what other people think. I mean, there's teachers in our unit who've been teaching pre-faculty for so long, and I imagine I would give you a very different response to the one that I give.
No, you actually have given me some very valuable information. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
It's a pleasure. Are we finished?
Thank you. Yes.
Shall I leave the chair? Is anybody else coming?